The dual sons of Carrion. Delta hammered against the cracked trading plaza of Rustspire settlement, turning the air into a rippling furnace that seemed determined to swallow the weak. Leora kept her silver-blue gaze glued to the ochre dirt, refusing to meet the pitying stares and vicious murmurs, slicing through the shimmering heat like fragments of glass. Next to her father Ardon Vale swayed unsteadily, the sour sting of last night's fermented dune brew still leaking from his breath. He had been drinking since sunrise, desperately trying and failing to drown the shame now being aired, like a public execution. On the ramshackle wooden platform, a gaunt auctioneer with a curled metal mustache lifted his iron mallet. His voice screeched through the settlement like tortured machinery. 20 hectares of high-grade loam, capable of sustaining full-cycle grain cultivation. Who bids? Who will claim the final holdings of the Vale family? Leora's hands tightened until the joints ached, her sapphire skin darkening toward a stormy indigo as she swallowed, everything boiling inside her. 20 hectares, all that remained of land once owned by her grandfather, land that had fed 3 generations, land where she had raced through tall grain as a child, land where her mother had been buried beneath a ring of wind chimes 5 years earlier, now reduced to an item on a ledger, now reduced because of one man's collapse. 1,000 credits. Someone barked. 500. Another shouted. Her father, once Commander Ardon Vale of the Frontier Shield Division, now a man haunted by debt, drink, and regret, let out a trembling groan. Leora, my child, forgive me. Forgive this broken old fool. She did not reply. There were no words for this mixture of fury, grief, and exhausted kindness tangled inside her. 3 years. 3 years of foolish spending, illegal wagering in the shadow dens of Dustfall, and loans from men who preyed on desperation. The drought of Cycle 72 had delivered the first blow, scorching their grain fields into ash, but it was her father's unsteady, liquor-stained hand that had signed the final death warrant. 20,000 credits. The voice crashed through the whispers like a meteor impact. Silence clawed across the plaza. Leora lifted her eyes, heart stuttering. Who would pay that much for drought-stricken fields? In the shadow of an ancient glassroot tree, 3 riders perched atop humming grav cycles watched calmly. The man in the center was impossible to mistake, a towering figure with the posture of someone forged in war, dressed head to toe in black despite the blistering heat. A battered combat coat wrapped around shoulders broad enough to block sunlight. A wide-brimmed dust hat hid part of his face, but Leora could still see the jagged scar carving down from his left eye to his jaw, a scar like frozen lightning. His long, iron-dark hair was tied back with careless practicality. It's him, someone hissed behind her. The Iron Warden of Black Summit. Cade Rax. A ripple of dread-laced awe swept through the crowd. Everyone across the borderlands knew that name. Cade Rax, who had appeared out of nowhere a decade earlier with enough credits to buy the entire Black Summit range. Cade Rax, the man whispered to have been a mercenary, a killer, a ghost of war. Some claimed he had ended 15 men in combat. Others swore he strangled his first spouse for betrayal. Rumor said everything. Truth stayed silent. The auctioneer's throat bobbed nervously. 20,000 credits. Do I hear more? Anyone, anything. No one dared. Sold. Sold to Cade Rax for 20,000 credits. 3 strikes of the mallet. With each one, a piece of her heritage fell away like crumbling stone. Her father wept openly now, loud, choking sobs that unraveled whatever dignity he had left. Leora steadied him as he nearly collapsed. The 3 riders approached. The grav cycles hissed softly, kicking up spirals of red dust. Cade Rax dismounted in one fluid, unnaturally graceful motion for a man of his size. Leora guessed he was a bit past 35, but his eyes, tar-black, unreadable, felt centuries older. Commander Vale. His voice was deep, steady, every syllable placed with surgical precision. We have matters to resolve. Arden trembled. Mr. Rax, sir, thank you for purchasing the land. You were generous, more than fair. Generous? The faintest curl, smile, or threat tugged at Cade's mouth. Then you misunderstand me, Commander. I do not deal in generosity. He jerked his chin toward one of his men. A squat, hawk-eyed fellow stepped forward carrying a leather data case. Cade unrolled a set of documents. Your land was worth 12,000 at best. I paid 20, and no, I did not pay for the soil. His gaze lifted, locking onto Leora's for the first time. It felt like an ice shard sliding into her chest. I paid for the debt you owe me. Arden's soul seemed to drain from his face. De debt, sir, I never... 3 cycles ago, you borrowed 15,000 credits from Jaro Venkin of Crystal Springs to restore your fields after the drought. You signed at 10% monthly interest. He let the papers snap between his fingers. Venkin sold me your debt 2 cycles ago. With interest, late fees, and compounding, Commander, you now owe me 38,000 credits. The plaza lurched under Leora's feet. Impossible. A fortune. Debt large enough to chain 10 generations. But I didn't know, Arden stammered. Venkin never told me. What you knew is irrelevant. What you owe is not. Cade rolled the papers and tucked them away. You have no credits, no land. Nothing of value with which to repay me. Silence devoured the square. Every face turned toward them, hungry, predatory, eager for tragedy. I can work, Arden gasped. I can work your ranch, your fields, your herds, anything, Mr. Rax, please. You are a drunk and a gambler, Cade replied without emotion. I do not hire broken men. He paused. But I do have use for her. His finger pointed straight at Leora. Her world froze. No, Arden whispered. No, sir, please, no. Take me instead. Kill me if you wish, but not my daughter. She is innocent. I said nothing about harming her. Cade stepped closer, casting a shadow large enough to swallow her. I spoke of marriage. The plaza erupted into gasps and frantic murmurs. Marriage? Arden blinked, lost in shock. Marriage? I have been widowed 3 years, Cade said calmly. I require a woman to maintain my home, to bear heirs, to fulfill the responsibilities expected of a wife. The stranger's statement hung in the air like a thunderclap, crashing through the murmurs of the crowd. He spoke of marriage the way traders discussed livestock inventories, his tone flat and transactional. Your daughter, he continued, voice steady like cooled iron, is young, healthy from what I can see, and from the information delivered to me, educated. She is suitable. Suitable. As if evaluating a tool, a flare of heat surged through Leora's chest, and before she realized it, her voice split through the heavy air. I am a person, not a grain sack to be inspected and declared useful. Cade didn't flinch, but something flickered behind his storm-dark eyes. Curiosity, maybe even respect. A sharp tongue, too, he murmured. That may prove inconvenient, but most habits can be corrected with discipline. Mr. Rax, please, her father rasped, stumbling forward. She is just a child. Only 19. 19 seasons according to the temple records, Cade replied calmly. Well within the customary age for a legal union. He redirected his gaze to her father, voice precise, almost coldly patient. My offer is singular. It will not be amended. Your daughter becomes my wife. In exchange, the entire amount of your outstanding liability, 38,000 stellar credits, is nullified. Additionally, I will provide a stipend of 500 credits every month for the care of your younger children. The word stabbed into Leora's chest. Her siblings, Thomas, barely 8, little Pima, 6, and baby Alini, just 4, fragile, hungry children who had slept cold last winter, whose clothes were threadbare, whose hollow cheeks haunted her dreams. And if I refuse? She whispered, though she already felt the walls closing in. Cade held her gaze, his expression unreadable. There was no cruelty in his eyes, only reality. Then I will enforce the contract under border world law. Your father will be taken to the Crimson Hollow Penitentiary, where he will remain until death claims him. You and the younger ones will lose your home, your land, your protections. His pause was sharp. I am familiar with the fate awaiting unshielded young women in the frontier zone. It is unpleasant, a future I don't care to imagine even for enemies. The net snapped shut. No gaps, no escape. Leora looked at her father, who trembled violently, tears streaking his dusted cheeks. She looked at the watching villagers, faces she had known since childhood, some pitying, others feeding on her misery like carrion beasts. Grateful fate had chosen someone else. Then she lifted her eyes to Cade Rax, the warlord of iron. Summit, the man who would take ownership of her life under the guise of matrimony. How long until the ceremony? She asked. Her voice didn't shake. 3 days, he answered. The binding will be conducted at Iron Summit Keep. Afterward, you will not return to this settlement. May I at least say farewell to my siblings? You may, but hear this clearly. Miss Leora. His voice dropped to something deeper, something absolute. Once you become my wife, you are mine entirely. No return, no flight, no undoing. His stare was unwavering. What is mine remains mine, always. I understand, Leora said, refusing to break eye contact. Good. He motioned to his men. A transport will arrive at dawn in 3 days. Bring only essentials. Everything else will be supplied. He swung onto his hover drift with smooth, practiced ease. Before igniting the engine, he looked at her one last time, something unreadable passing in his gaze. One more thing, Miss Leora, he said. Do not force me to regret my decision. I am not a man who grants second chances. Then he rode away, his convoy trailing red dust like a bleeding wound behind them, leaving her beneath the crushing knowledge of what her future had become. The Vale household, once the proudest structure in Dust Hollow, settlement, now wilted beneath the twin suns. Its sun-bleached walls peeled like old parchment. Tiles cracked. Her mother's garden, once a lush emerald patch, now crumbled into dry, lifeless soil, a perfect monument to the slow ruin of a family. Leora slipped in through the side entrance, avoiding the common room where she knew her father would drown guilt in more liquor. She walked straight down the hall toward the children's quarters. Leora's home! Alini's tiny voice echoed before 3 small bodies barreled into her, clinging to her legs, arms around her waist. Leora knelt quickly, holding them tight as tears finally burst free, tears she had held back beneath the eyes of the village. Here, hidden behind crumbling walls, she finally let herself break. Why are you crying? Thomas asked, frowning, his big brown eyes full of worry. Father said you're marrying a rich man. Isn't that a good thing? I'm happy, she lied, kissing his hair. These are happy tears. You lie, Alini declared with childish bluntness. You're sad. I know when you're sad. Pima pressed closer, tiny fingers gripping Leora's dress as if she feared she might vanish. Come, Leora said softly. Into your room. I need to tell you something important. Their room was tiny, but she had kept it warm with what little she could hold together. Patched curtains, handmade dolls, Tamus's drawings taped proudly on the walls, all small shields against the collapse of their world. She sat on the bed, pulling them close. You know Father has been struggling, she began slowly. And because of that, things have been hard. I know sometimes there isn't enough to eat. Thomas murmured, solemn. And you give us your share. Leora's chest tightened painfully. Well, she continued softly, that's going to change. The man I will marry, he promised to help you all. You'll have food, new clothes, maybe even school again. But you're leaving, Pima whispered. I am, she said, breath catching. I'm going to live far away, in the mountain highlands. When will you come back? Alini asked, her tiny voice full of innocent trust. Leora opened her mouth, and everything inside her shattered. Leora's chest ached with the unbearable weight of leaving. I don't want you to go. Alini's small voice trembled, tears spilling freely. I hate this man who's taking you from us. Leora hugged her tightly, letting her own tears return unbidden. I know, my sweet. I know, she whispered, voice breaking. But I must go. It is the only way to make sure you have food, safety, and a future. Is this because of us? Thomas asked softly, his 8-year-old eyes wide with understanding. Are you giving yourself up for us? It is not sacrifice when it is done for love, Leora replied, her voice steady for the first time in hours. And in that moment, as her arms wrapped around her little siblings, she felt a flicker of purpose, a small light in the storm of her despair. You are all I have. Mother made me promise I would take care of you. This is me keeping that promise. Hours passed in the dimly lit room. Leora told them stories from their mother's life, sang the lullabies they used to hear, and made pledges she wasn't sure she could keep. When the twin suns began their descent, painting the sky in molten reds and fiery oranges, she finally tucked them into bed. Leora, Thomas called softly as she reached the door. Will you be happy with this man? She paused, staring into the fading light outside. Silence stretched, heavy and painful. I will try, Thomas, I will try with all my heart. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of minimal preparations and agonizing farewells. She had only a few belongings, mended dresses, her mother's silver earrings, a rosary of obsidian beads, and a prayer book she had painstakingly learned to read. Before dawn on the third day, she was ready. A transport waited outside unexpectedly, grand for the arid wastelands of Dust Hollow. Its black frame gleamed with polished metal accents, lifted by 4 powerful hover engines. The driver, an elderly man with scarred features, bowed respectfully but kept a distant demeanor. "Miss Leora, I am Seth, steward of Iron Summit Keep," he said quietly. "I have come at the Master's command to escort you." Leora nodded, lifting her bundle. When she turned, she saw her father in the doorway, swaying unsteadily, cheeks flushed, eyes swollen with emotion. "My daughter." His voice trembled. "No, father," she said firmly, raising her hand to stop him. "There is nothing left to say that can change this. Just take care of them. Take care of Thomas, Pima, and Eleni. That is the only request I leave you with." "I am sorry." So sorry." He nodded weakly, tears welling, understanding that words could not undo what had been done. Leora stepped into the transport without looking back, even as his sobs echoed behind her. If she allowed herself to glance once more, she feared she would collapse entirely. The journey was long and wordless. Seth spoke little, which suited her perfectly. Outside, the barren landscape of Dust Hollow sped past. Gnarled trees, scattered outposts and distant plateaus shimmering under the relentless suns. As the transport climbed into the highlands, the scenery gradually shifted. Air cooled slightly. Vegetation became denser. Streams glimmered among rocks tinged with unexpected greens and browns. The peaks of Iron Summit were an oasis amidst the harsh frontier, blessed with fertile soil and hidden springs that created a rare microclimate. Late that afternoon, they reached the gates of Iron Summit Keep. Leora's breath caught. This was no simple estate, it was a fortress. Towering stone walls rose high, crowned with watchtowers at each corner. The main house was vast, colonial in style but modified for defense. Narrow windows, thick walls, a single imposing entrance. "The Master favors security," Seth commented as Leora's gaze swept the fortress. "He has many enemies." "Why?" she asked softly. "In these lands no one amasses wealth without making adversaries," he replied. "And the Master, he has a history that few forget." The transport stopped before the main entrance. Servants, serious and well-trained, formed 2 neat lines. Atop the staircase, one figure stood apart, a woman dressed in head-to-toe black, posture rigid with authority, gray hair tightly bound in a bun. Her dark eyes assessed Leora as though she were a ledger to be balanced. "Mistress Grenner," Seth announced, assisting Leora down the steps. "The housekeeper." The woman descended slowly, voice measured. "Miss Leora, welcome to Iron Summit Keep. I am Grenner Santos, responsible for all domestic matters. The Master has commanded that you be prepared for the ceremony." "Ceremony now?" Leora asked, panic rising in her throat. "The priest has arrived, and the Master sees no reason to delay the inevitable," Grenner replied firmly, though without cruelty. "Come, you will bathe and dress appropriately." Inside, the mansion defied expectations. Polished planks gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Noble wood furniture lined the halls, and paintings adorned the walls. Rustic frontier life was nowhere to be found. Grenner led Leora to a spacious chamber. "These will be your quarters for now. After the ceremony, you will move to the Master's quarters." She opened a large closet, revealing dresses Leora had never dared imagine. "These were chosen based on the Master's specifications," Grenner explained. "I trust they will fit." How did you have my measurements?" Leora asked, astonished. "The Master has his methods," Grenner said simply, pulling out a white silk dress elegant in its simplicity. "This will be for the ceremony. Come, the bath is ready." Hours passed in a whirlwind. Leora was washed, perfumed, her long black hair brushed until it shimmered, braided and pinned with delicate precision. The dress hugged her form in ways that made her feel unfamiliar, almost regal. When she glimpsed her reflection, she barely recognized herself. No longer the ragged girl of Dust Hollow, but someone entirely new. "It is time," Grenner announced. Trembling, Leora was escorted through the mansion to a private chapel tucked in a side wing. Small yet immaculate, it smelled faintly of incense, walls adorned with saints and painted reliefs. And there he was, Cade Rack, standing before the altar, dressed in black save for a crisp white shirt. He turned as she entered. For the first time, she saw him fully, without his hat, without concealment. The scar on his face was even more striking, etching a story of danger across his features. In the flickering glow of candlelight, Leora's gaze was drawn to Cade Rax's eyes, and for a fleeting instant, she glimpsed something unanticipated, an almost imperceptible softness, a brief flicker that might have been admiration. "Miss Leora," he said, voice resonating in the intimate space. "Are you ready?" No. She wanted to scream, to run, to undo the last 24 hours. But she only nodded, her chest tight with dread. Father Carlin, small and twitchy, performed the ceremony with visible haste. Every word he spoke seemed reluctant, his hands trembling slightly, eager to conclude the event in retreat from the imposing presence of Cade. Traditional phrases were recited, vows exchanged. Leora heard her own voice, distant and surreal, pledging promises she had never wished to make, accepting a destiny forced upon her. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest said, relief evident in his tone. "What the heavens have joined, let no mortal tear apart." Cade approached, and Leora had to tilt her chin upward to meet him. Up close, he was even more formidable, radiating the scent of leather, scorched tobacco, and something raw, something primal that she could not name. "My wife," he said, his voice possessive, and a shiver raced down her spine. He leaned forward, and she closed her eyes instinctively. The kiss was fleeting, almost a brush, yet it sent a thrum of awareness through her chest. When he stepped back, a new intensity glimmered in his eyes. "Come," he said. "Dinner has been prepared." The dining room was vast, a table long enough for 20, yet only 2 settings were arranged at opposite ends. Leora felt awkward in the refined silk of her dress, surrounded by polished silverware, and the heavy contrast of her former life's destitution. The meal was plentiful: roasted venison, hearty grain stew, freshly baked bread, cheese, and sweet preserves for dessert. Hunger gnawed at her, yet her throat felt constricted, unable to satisfy itself with the bounty. Cade ate with meticulous care, methodical, detached, as though the meal was an obligation, not a pleasure. "Do you not enjoy the food?" he asked without glancing at her. "It's a lot," Leora murmured. "Get accustomed. Here, hunger is not permitted." Finally, he raised his gaze, locking onto her. "Your old clothes will be incinerated. Grenner will supply an entire wardrobe. You will receive a monthly stipend for personal needs. Books, fabrics, anything within reason. Am I your wife or your property?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence descended. Cade carefully set his cutlery, dabbed his lips with the linen napkin, then leaned back unflinching. "Legally, you are my wife," he said slowly, voice measured. "Practically, you are both. This is the reality of the circumstances you and your father created. Fair? No, but it is reality." He rose, pacing around the table with deliberate steps. "You may despise me as many do, yet understand this, Leora. I am not a monster. I do not strike women nor publicly humiliate them without cause. I am hard because I have lived hard. But if you grant me respect, you will receive it in return. Defy me, and you will learn that my patience is limited." Leora's throat tightened, but she met his gaze. "And if I ask you something, will you answer truthfully?" Cade's brow lifted, curiosity faint in his otherwise impenetrable expression. "Is it true," she asked, voice trembling slightly, "that you killed 15 men? That you were a mercenary and that you killed your first wife?" For a long silence, he said nothing. Then a shadow of a smile curved his lips, cold, humorless, uninviting. "Not 15, 18. Mercenary work occupied my life from 14 to 22. My first wife, she died. The circumstances are none of your concern." He stepped back, moving toward the door. "Grenner will guide you to our quarters. I will join you in an hour. Use the time to prepare yourself mentally for what is expected. I was clear enough earlier in the square about my demands of a wife." He departed, leaving Leora alone with her untouched meal and a heart that felt too tight for her chest. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the heavy curtains, casting golden stripes across polished wood floors. For a moment she lay disoriented, the reality crashing down. She was at Iron Summit Keep, bound to Cade Rax as his wife. She closed her eyes, warmth rushing to her cheeks. The previous night had been a torrent of unknown sensations. Pain, yes, but also an unexpected fire. Cade had been gentle, at least initially, his large hands careful, his voice soft when it needed to be. And yet when passion surged fully, there had been intensity, almost frightening, in its animalistic fervor, yet it stirred something unfamiliar inside her. Leora opened her eyes, seeing the other side of the bed empty. The sheets had cooled, yet a single crimson flower lay upon the pillow, a wild bloom from the borderlands, thorns intact. She twirled it between her fingers, mystified. What manner of man left a flower after such a night? Romantic, awkward, ritualistic? A discreet knock made her sit up quickly, clutching the sheets to her chest. "Enter," she said, trying to sound composed. Grenner stepped in with a tray of breakfast. Bread, fruit, cheese, and steaming coffee. Her sharp gaze flicked over Leora, noting the faint red marks on her neck, her disheveled hair and the flower clasped in her hand. "Good morning, ma'am," Grenner said, setting the tray down. "The master instructed that you rest this morning." "Is he working already?" "Before sunrise, always. Riding the estate, inspecting livestock, conferring with the foreman, overseeing crops. A man idle is a man in peril," Grenner explained as she opened the curtains, flooding the room with light. As Leora ate, astonished at how famished she was, Grenner began arranging her clothing meticulously on the bed. "May I ask you something?" Leora ventured hesitantly. "The first wife, what was she like?" Grenner froze, hands lingering on the last buttons. A long silence followed before she replied. "Lady Serana was different. Very different from you." "How so?" Leora asked, curiosity mingled with unease. In the servants' wing, the quiet hum of activity contrasted sharply with the disciplined life of the household. Some attendants stitched intricate embroidery, others practiced on the synthesizer, their melodies filling the hall with a faintly mechanical, yet oddly calming rhythm. Grenner finished fastening Leora's gown with precise movements, the satin smooth under her fingers. Leora hated this place. She hated the isolation, the endless corridors, the oppressive grandeur. She paused, she even hated the master. And yet why had she married him? Arranged marriage. Her father's debts had been settled. Her life traded for the security of her siblings. It was business, pure and simple. Grenner lifted a comb, beginning the delicate work of taming Leora's wild locks into a polished bun. "But," she said quietly, "unlike you, Lady Serana had no noble purpose. She had no family to protect, no younger siblings depending on her courage. Only bruised pride fueled her resistance to the marriage." "Pride can be a dangerous thing," Grenner continued. "She thought him beneath her, though he is rich and powerful." "But not a noble?" Leora asked, curious. "Exactly. No lineage of note, no title to open the salons of Crimson Vale or Silver Springs. To women like Serana, that mattered more than fortune itself." Grenner secured the last pin. "And she never forgave him for it." Leora absorbed the words in silence. A picture formed in her mind. A bitter marriage, a defiant woman, a proud man unwilling to reveal how much the jabs had hurt. "How did she die, Mistress Grenner?" Leora asked cautiously. Grenner's hands paused. A long, measured silence fell. "Poison," she said finally. "Whether by her own hand or circumstances, I cannot say." She left the sentence unfinished, her gaze averted. Before Leora could press further, Grenner was already guiding her out. "Come, girl. I will show you the estate. Every detail you must know to manage it well." By daylight, Iron Summit Keep was even more imposing. The mansion rose 3 stories high, dozens of rooms, each more elaborate than the last. Grenner led Leora room by room, cataloging their purpose with meticulous care. The great hall displayed massive jacaranda furnishings and paintings, depicting rugged borderlands and saints, yet not a single portrait of family. The dining room, where she had dined the previous night, shimmered under the morning light. The library made Leora halt in awe. Hundreds of volumes lined the walls from floor to ceiling. "The master is literate?" she asked, incredulous. "Not just literate," Grenner said, pride in her tone. "He writes, reads, and does mathematics better than most merchants. Nights are spent here. He says an ignorant man is a controlled man." Leora's fingers brushed the spines of leather-bound books, marveling at the collection: novels, treatises on agriculture, historical accounts, even volumes of poetry. "A library many aristocrats would envy." "The master said you may use it freely," Grenner explained. "Only return the books to their place." For a moment, a faint warmth softened Leora's chest. Perhaps Cade Rax had more beneath the iron exterior than she imagined. The tour continued. Grenner revealed the kitchen, outfitted with a massive wood-burning stove, well-stocked pantries, and 3 cooks supervised by the formidable Sebastiana. Then the servant quarters, the laundry, and various outbuildings. Outside, the true scope of the estate unfolded. Corrals teemed with cattle, pastures extended endlessly, and fields of grain were lined in precise rows. In the distance, a large building marked the former slave quarters. "Are there still slaves here?" Leora asked, unease threading her voice. "No," Grinner replied firmly. "The master freed them 10 years ago. He does not tolerate slave blood on his land." She gestured to smaller, well-constructed houses further out. "Work is voluntary, fair wages are offered. Most chose to stay. Hard labor, yes, but not cruelty. Slavery persisted across the system, yet Cade had chosen free labor. Conviction, pragmatism, or perhaps memory of life without freedom. She could not know. By midday, they returned to the mansion. Grenner led Leora to a small office on the 3rd floor. "This will be your domain. You will manage household accounts, supervise staff, plan meals, inventory provisions." She opened a thick ledger. "Everything is to be recorded. The master reviews the books monthly." Leora flipped through the pages. Elegant handwriting, presumably Serana's, marred by blanks and inconsistent sums. Perhaps Cade had tolerated her mistakes or simply ignored them. "May I ask questions?" she ventured. "Yes, but try to solve problems yourself first. The master values initiative." Grenner paused at the doorway. "One last caution, ma'am. Some parts of the house are forbidden." "Forbidden?" "The 3rd floor," Grenner said firmly. "Locked doors, yes, but even unlocked, do not go. The master's orders are absolute. The past lies there, better left undisturbed." She left before Leora could inquire further. Alone, Leora gazed out, seeing men tending fields, cattle grazing, and the reservoir Cade had constructed, damming a stream to secure water during droughts. "I bought this land with blood money," he had said, "but I aim to build something lasting, something clean." Afternoon hours passed with accounting and lists, grappling with the intricate management of the estate. Exhaustion came, yet a surprising sense of control, a first in years, filled her. As evening approached, hoofbeats echoed in the courtyard. Her heart raced. Cade was returning. Leora smoothed her dress, unsure whether to approach or wait. Granner appeared, voice firm. "The master requests your presence in the parlor." Cade stood by the window, clothes smeared with sweat and dust from the day's work. Recognition flickered in his expression when he saw her. "Leora," he said, using her first name, a small, surprising intimacy. "Come. You have introductions to make." 3 men entered, each armed and hardened by life in the borderlands. Cade introduced them as his business partners. Esteban Costa, a southern landowner. Miguel Bander, an agricultural investor. And Vorin Kale, a livestock magnate from Lavale. Leora extended her hand in polite greeting to each. Yet as it met Vorin Kale's icy grasp, a shiver ran down her spine. He was tall, towering like Cade, but unlike her solid, muscular husband, Vorin was wiry, almost skeletal. Expensive attire draped over a body that seemed unnatural in its precision. Every movement held a predator's fluidity, and his pale, almost translucent eyes made her skin crawl. "A pleasure, Mistress Rax," he purred, his voice unnervingly smooth as he held her hand just a second too long. "The master is fortunate. A beauty like yours is uncommon in these arid borderlands." "You are polite," Leora said, withdrawing her hand with measured calm. "Kindness has little to do with it." Vorin's lips curved, but the smile did not reach his eyes. Predatory. "I am merely stating truths. Isn't that correct, Cade?" The room thickened with tension. Leora felt Cade's hand press lightly against her back. When she met his eyes, they were dark, sharp, like steel ready to cut. "Watch your tongue, Vorin," Cade said, voice low and deadly. "This is my home." "Merely a compliment between friends," Vorin replied, hands raised in feigned submission, though malice glimmered behind his polished demeanor. "No offense intended." Offense had already been taken. Cade turned to Leora, dismissing her with authority. "You may retire. We have matters to discuss." Relieved, Leora curtsied and left. Even as she stepped down the corridor, she heard the faint echo of voices. "Careful, Cade," Vorin's silky warning whispered from the study. "Beautiful women invite trouble, jealousy, your first wife, rest her soul, learned that the hard way." The sharp crash of breaking glass followed. Then Cade's voice, cold and lethal. "Finish that sentence, Vorin, and it will be the last you ever speak with your teeth intact." Leora hurried down the hall, heart racing. What history lingered between these men? And why did she sense that Voron would be far more than a fleeting nuisance? Dinner that evening was subdued, tension simmering beneath each bite. Cade ate methodically, movements precise, controlled as if holding back a storm. Leora broke the silence. Is Voron your friend? Cade's eyes lifted slowly. No, I have few friends.
He is not one of them.
Then why is he here? Business, he replied. Sometimes necessity forces dealings with those we despise. But heed this, do not approach him. Do not speak to him. Never give him an opening. Leora shivered at the intensity in his gaze. Voron is a serpent, Cade continued. Beautiful on the outside, lethal on attack. He set down his cutlery deliberately, then leaned back. You heard mention of my first wife. Do you wish to know her story? She stayed silent, but he pressed on, voice even yet commanding. It is natural curiosity, but not tonight, not here. Follow me. Confused, Leora rose and followed him into the cool evening. The borderland plateau offered a chill uncommon at these altitudes. Moonlight painted the stone path silver, guiding them to a secluded rise behind the mansion. A low white stone wall enclosed a private cemetery. Modest, dignified. Only 5 headstones punctuated the quiet. Cade stopped at one. Moonlight revealed the engraving. Serrana Vasquez Rax, born 49, died 69. May the heavens grant her peace. She was 20 when she died, he said flatly. Our marriage lasted barely a year. Leora waited, and he continued without prompt. She was beautiful. More so than you, I admit. Blonde hair, blue eyes, rare in the borderlands. Daughter of a respected colonel, educated in a convent, played the synthesizer like an angel, and she despised me with every fiber of her being. Why? Leora asked softly. Because I was not the man she wanted. She loved another, a lieutenant from the capital, charming and handsome. But her father owed debts to me. The payment was her. A grim smile curved Cade's lips. History is ironic, is it not? It repeats itself. Leora felt a chill unrelated to the night air. She never forgave me for taking her life from her. Never accepted the marriage. Then she tried to kill me. What? Leora's voice trembled. Poison, enough to kill livestock. Did it kill me? No. But it left me gravely ill. He traced a scar along his jawline. I confronted her. A struggle ensued. She attempted to stab me and in the confusion, fell from the 3rd-floor balcony. He met her gaze squarely. It was an accident. But no one believed me, including her, in the fleeting seconds before impact. A heavy silence enveloped them, thick as lead. Why are you telling me this? Leora finally asked. Because I do not want secrets between us, not of this nature. And because you must understand, loving me is no simple thing. My past is stained with blood and mistakes. My first wife hated me, quite literally until death. Perhaps you will too. Maybe that is the fate of men like me. And what kind of man are you? She whispered. Cade stepped closer. His eyes held neither cruelty nor mercy, only unflinching reality, like one reading the skies to predict storms, the kind who killed his first man at 14. A mercenary because there were no choices. The kind who robbed, fought, and survived by necessity, yet also the kind who tries to change, who builds something lasting with the credits earned, no matter the cost. Why tell me all this? Because you are not Serrana. I saw it yesterday, your courage in demanding respect, even in an impossible situation. You possess strength she lacked, and he hesitated, a rare crack in his certainty. Because I do not want you to fear me. Respect, yes, but fear never. Moonlight draped him in silver and shadow. Leora studied him, realizing this man was a paradox. Brutal yet gentle, unyielding yet vulnerable, terrifying yet eerily honest. I do not know if I can love you, she admitted, voice raw and sincere. Not yet, he replied evenly. Perhaps never. But I can try, not to hate you. That is all I can promise for now. Cade laughed. Genuine, unforced, not bitter. More than Serrana ever offered, he said. He extended his arm. After a brief hesitation, Leora took it. They walked back toward the mansion in silence, yet it was no longer tense. It felt tentative, almost comforting. Upon reaching her room, Cade drew her close. This time when their lips met, it was not command, it was something softer, uncertain, yet compelling. And when she finally responded, allowing herself to truly open to him, it was a choice. Limited, yes, but a choice, something entirely different from submission. That night was nothing like the first. It was slower, tentative, exploratory, Every touch, every whispered word carried a new layer of understanding, a fragile intimacy. When exhaustion finally overtook her and she drifted to sleep in his arms, there was an unexpected serenity. For the first time, Leora felt a strange, fragile hope for what many had deemed an impossible marriage. The following days fell into a rhythm. Cade rose with the suns, working tirelessly from dawn to dusk, returning coated in dust and sweat. Yet he always appeared for dinner. Their conversations were brief, measured, but meaningful. Leora began to understand his habits, his silences, the cadence of his presence. She, in turn, immersed herself in managing the estate. She discovered an unexpected satisfaction in orchestrating the intricate workings of the mansion, organizing schedules, maintaining order, and ensuring the smooth running of the household brought her a sense of control she had not felt for years. The staff respected her, not out of fear, but because she treated them with a dignity absent under Serana's rule. A week after the wedding, Leora was at the office when Grenner arrived carrying a small worn wooden box. "I thought you might want this," the housekeeper said, gently setting it on the desk. Leora tilted her head. "What is it?" "Belongings of Lady Serana," Grenner replied. The master had nearly everything burned, but some items, mainly documents, he kept. Said they might prove useful one day. Curiosity gnawed at Leora. The moment Grenner departed, she carefully opened the box. Inside were letters, official documents, marriage records, and at the bottom, a diary bound in red leather. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. She knew she shouldn't read it, an intrusion into someone else's private grief, but the compulsion was too strong. The first page read, 15th day of the first month, 68. Today is the worst day of my life. Father, deliver me from this fate. There is no other word for what I face. Marriage to Cade Rax, a man forged in blood, a former mercenary, an assassin, unrefined, uneducated, and entirely without breeding. I would rather die than be bound to such a creature. Leora turned the pages at random, each entry more chilling than the last. 10th day of the third month, 68. The ceremony was yesterday. I wept without ceasing. He noticed nothing. Or if he did not care. At night, I cannot write. I will never forgive him. I will never love this monster. 22nd day of the 7th month, 68. A letter from Gilm arrived today. My dearest Gilm still loves me, still plans to run away with me. He promises a path to freedom. I must endure this hell a little longer. 5th day of the 12th month, 68. Vorin Kale visited today. He is Gilm's ally. He brought a gift, a white powder he claimed to ease insomnia. His eyes betrayed something else. Does he comprehend my desperation? Would he assist me? Leora froze, heart hammering. Vorin Kale, the same man who had come days ago, had been complicit in Serana's attempts. She pressed on. 20th day of the first month, 69. I cannot endure this further. I placed the powder in his food today. A potent dose. I pray it works. I pray freedom finds me. 22nd day of the first month, 69. He did not die. How is this possible? He became ill, gravely so, but survived. He knows, I saw it in his eyes upon waking. May the heavens forgive me. I must escape. The final entry, dated the following day, consisted of a single line, frantic and uneven. He is coming. And then nothing more. Leora closed the diary, her hands quivering. The truth of Cade's account was undeniable. Serana had tried to kill him, and Vorin Kale had been involved. She returned the diary to the box, but a loose letter slipped to the floor. Picking it up, she noted its recent date, only 2 months before her own marriage to Cade. It was addressed to him, from Vorin Kale. My dear Cade, I hear you plan to wed once more. I commend your courage. Few would dare after such tragedy, but allow me to offer counsel. Choose carefully. Beauty and youth are alluring, yet can bring identical complications. Serana was beautiful. See how that ended. If you require my insight in judging your new bride, I remain at your disposal. Old friends should support one another. With respect, Vorin Kale, a wave of nausea hit Leora. Evaluate suitability. There was something profoundly wrong here. And the veiled reference to Serana's death. She needed to tell Cade about the diary, about Vorin's involvement. But fear anchored her tongue. If he knew she had discovered this, what might he do? Kill the man? And then what consequences would that bring? Before she could decide, a sudden clamor from the courtyard shattered the quiet hooves shouting, and the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Leora sprinted to the window in time to witness 3 armed men storming the property, discharging energy weapons into the air. The ranch hands responded immediately, returning fire. Amid the chaos, she saw Cade, unarmed, caught by surprise, scrambling for cover behind a hovering transport vehicle. One of the assailants leveled a weapon directly at him. "Cade, watch out!" Leora screamed instinctively. Her warning saved him. He ducked at the precise moment the bolt passed, hissing as it skimmed where his head had been seconds before. Within moments, the ranch hands had subdued the intruders. 2 were killed, 1 fled. Cade entered the mansion like a tempest, blood streaking a gash on his forehead, eyes wild with intensity. When he saw Leora standing at the office doorway, he froze. "It was you," he breathed. "You saved my life." They locked eyes for a long, electric moment. Then Cade crossed the distance in 3 swift strides, pulling her into a fierce, bone-crushing embrace. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "Thank you," Leora replied, holding him tightly, sensing the raw power of his heartbeat against her own. And in that instant, a startling awareness dawned. She was beginning to care for him. Not love, not yet, but something dangerously close. The night air of Iron Summit Keep was heavy with the scent of pine and the distant, metallic tang of machinery. Leora stood at the balcony, her hands resting on the stone balustrade, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The chaos of the day still echoed in her mind, the attack, the flashes of energy bolts, the unmistakable adrenaline of near death. Her heartbeat had yet to return to normal, though the suns had long disappeared behind the jagged peaks. Behind her, the soft click of footsteps made her tense. She didn't need to turn. She already knew who it was. Cade stepped onto the balcony, his coat dusted from the day's work, a faint smear of blood still visible on his forehead. His eyes, dark and intense, searched hers, and she felt that strange pull she could no longer deny. "You shouldn't have screamed," he said, his voice low, carrying that mixture of reprimand and gratitude that always left her uneasy. "I couldn't stand by," she replied, her throat dry, her fingers tightening around the stone railing. Someone was aiming for you." He studied her, the sharp lines of his face softened by the moonlight. "And you saved me." "That was reckless." "Maybe," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I couldn't do nothing." Cade stepped closer, each movement deliberate, heavy with an energy that seemed to shift the air around them. He stopped just a breath away, letting the tension hang like a tangible thread between them. For a moment neither spoke, and the silence was only broken by the distant clatter of the ranch at night, livestock shifting in the pens, servants moving quietly, the low hum of the generator powering the outbuildings. "You're different from Serana," he said finally, breaking the quiet. His tone was not accusatory, not judgmental, just factual, almost like he was cataloging the truth of it. She would have frozen. She would have screamed and hidden. You acted." Leora's chest tightened. She had read Serana's diary, had seen the desperate, painful attempts at escape, the poisoned gifts, the resentment buried in every line. And yet here she was, standing in the moonlight with the man Serana had once tried to kill, a man she was supposed to fear, and yet, "I'm not her," Leora said softly, a small edge of defiance in her voice. "And I'm not afraid." Cade's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable passing over his face. Pride, relief, perhaps even hope. He leaned closer, almost imperceptibly, and Leora felt the warmth of his presence. "You should be," he whispered. And there was a hint of playfulness, a sharp contrast to the steel edge he carried during the day. "But I'm glad you're not." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the distance between them charged with unspoken words, unsaid confessions, and a tension neither fully understood. And then Cade's hand brushed against hers, an almost casual gesture, yet every nerve in her body tingled at the contact. You read it," he said finally, his voice steady but quiet, eyes narrowing slightly. Leora froze. "The diary," she admitted. "I couldn't help it. I needed to understand. About Serana. About you." Cade's jaw clenched, but his hand remained close. "It's dangerous knowing those things," he said almost to himself. "Knowing the depths people will sink to." He paused, his gaze softening as he finally looked directly at her. "And yet, I trust you." She swallowed hard. The raw honesty in his voice unsettled her more than any threat ever could. "I don't know if I can forgive everything," she murmured. "Or love, or even Trust completely. He nodded slowly, as if he had expected that. You don't have to, not yet. But you saved me today. That's a start. The silence returned, but it was different now. Comfortable, not suffocating. Leora let her hands drop to her sides, letting go of the tension that had gripped her since the attack. She could feel the life returning to her limbs, the adrenaline fading, replaced by something fragile yet warm. Cade leaned against the balcony, his profile illuminated by the pale moonlight. There will be more threats, he said quietly. More danger. And I won't lie. Not everyone at Iron Summit is friendly. Not everyone will welcome you, Leora, but I'll protect you. Always. Leora tilted her head, meeting his gaze. Even Vorin Kale? She asked, the name leaving her lips like a warning. Cade's eyes darkened. Especially him, he said, his tone leaving no doubt. He's clever, patient, and ruthless. You will see his games, and you will need to be careful. But you have me. Her lips pressed together as she nodded, understanding the weight of his words. This was not just a marriage. This was survival, strategy, and trust, forged in the crucible of past betrayals and the ever-present threat of violence. The night stretched around them. The wind carried the scents of the highlands, the pine, the faint tang of livestock, the distant smoke of the kitchens. Cade finally extended his hand to her. Come, he said simply. It's late. You need rest. Tomorrow the work begins again. Leora hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The touch was firm but gentle, a promise without words. A connection neither could yet name. They walked back to the house in silence, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was tentative, fragile, but alive with possibility. When they entered the bedroom, the warmth from the hearth met them. Cade let go of her hand but kept his gaze on hers. Slowly he crossed the room, sitting on the edge of the bed, and gestured for her to sit beside him. She obeyed, heart still racing from the day, from the diary, from the attack. This time when he leaned forward and kissed her, it was different. No command, no assertion of power. It was measured, exploratory, gentle. Leora closed her eyes, letting the sensation wash over her. For the first time, the hardness of their relationship seemed to soften just a little. When they finally pulled back, Cade whispered, We'll figure this out together. It won't be easy, but we can survive. Maybe even something more. Leora's chest tightened with a mixture of fear, hope, and reluctant longing. Maybe, she said, her voice small but firm. Maybe we can. The moons of the borderlands glimmered through the window, casting silver light across the room. Outside, the ranch rested, quiet and sprawling, yet alive with unseen dangers. Inside, two people bound by fate, secrecy, and circumstance sat together, beginning the slow, uncertain dance of trust, survival, and perhaps love. And for the first time, Leora allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible marriage might have a future worth fighting for.